Well, thank you for joining us for this season's Club Chair Induction session. This forms part of an annual programme we do to offer new volunteers in the grassroots football community the opportunity to get to understand their roles a bit better, get to understand us at the County FA a bit better, and talk through what the new position is that they've put their hand up and stepped into. Before we start, I just want to say a massive thank you for putting your hands up and agreeing to step up to the role of a chairperson within Club of Bucks and Bucks FA. Without volunteers such as yourselves, we wouldn't be able to keep the grassroots football community going, so it is really appreciated, and it is a heartfelt thank you from all of us here at Bucks and Bucks for taking on the role. I hope it's one that you find enjoyable, and I'm sure it'll be something that will give you a lot of reward and satisfaction, hopefully, over the years to come. So the induction session today is going to cover a couple of key areas. We'll look at the role of the County FA, so who we are, where we sit in the grassroots football pyramid, and the kind of support that we can provide. We'll also then look at the role of the chair itself. So I've broken that down into its function and responsibility for long-term strategy, the governance of the club as an organisation, the day-to-day management, and then the role of the chair in representing the club in the wider football and non-football community. I will then take a look through some of the FA systems that are in place and how they can help you in the management of the club. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty in those, but I just want to try and point you towards a couple of key platforms we have and the reports you can use to kind of see how the club is performing against certain compliance issues, or how you can track any issues that you need to be aware of. And then at the end, if there are any questions, we'll try and pick those up then. Coming on to the role of the County FA then here at Bucks and Bucks. Really, I see us as central to the grassroots football pyramid, and a key role in making sure that everything is working as it should, and that we are working with all the different stakeholders and partners to keep grassroots football functioning. I think central to that is obviously we are delegated responsibility by the National FA for the governance and the development of football within Bucks and Bucks. So there's certain responsibility, certain authority that the FA pass on to us at a local level to make sure that we are keeping the game running effectively. Flip side of that is that as a local governing body, we then have a responsibility to report back upwards into the FA and make sure that the interests, the views, the opinions, the challenges of our local clubs and leagues are being properly represented up into the FA. And we have a couple of different functions and mechanisms to allow us to do that, ranging from a full-time member of the FA Council, who's a member of our board of directors, to more informal working groups featuring County FA staff, where we help shape policy, help shape operations at an FA level. Looking more locally, any club that is based within Bucks and Bucks affiliates to us, and any league where the majority of teams come from Bucks and Bucks are also affiliated into us. So obviously we've got that close relationship with those clubs and leagues to help support them with running football at a local level. And then supporting those relationships between clubs and leagues, that can range anything from kind of collaborating on different development projects to supporting or adjudicating on league appeals should a club want to challenge a decision of one of the leagues. And obviously everything in between, so just trying to keep everything moving seamlessly and supporting any kind of issues that may crop up. And as I say, collaborating on some of those longer term projects. We also then support local volunteers through how to perform their roles, use the technology that's available to them, and picking up any queries and issues that may crop up along the way. Moving on to your role now as the club chair. I've got the classic 4-line role in a nutshell definition. So the club chair is ultimately responsible for the club, for the running of the club, and setting its long-term strategy and direction, taking on that leadership role, and then has the casting vote on any matters that may affect the club. So what this means in reality is that as a chair, you need to be across all aspects of the club's operations. Maybe not, as I say, doing the doing. That's where hopefully you've got a club committee and a strong administrative team supporting you to do that, but really to have that broad picture understanding of the club's operations, be able to see that big picture, influence it, make sure that everything is operating as it should, and that those under you doing the administration and the executive team there are operating effectively and doing what is needed to be done, whether that is around legal responsibilities, football responsibilities, just day-to-day management of the club, really. The chair's also got that longer term leadership responsibility, so setting the strategy and the direction of the club. And then part of that is then if there's ever a kind of, a split vote within the club committee on any of those matters, the chair ultimately has that deciding vote. So if you've got an even number of people on your management committee, it's come down to 5 against 5, whichever way the chair votes will be the deciding vote. So I'm going to run through each of those kind of areas in a bit more detail. I'm going to start with the strategic leadership of the organisation. And as I say, ultimately, it is the chair that has to take on that responsibility and really drive that long-term vision forward. So part of that, I've got the formatting on this slide slightly wrong, but we're looking at things like setting the club ethos, the philosophy of the club, making sure that everybody knows what you stand for. Are you about participation and development? Are you about performance on the pitch? Are you about equal playing time? Those kinds of matters should be set by the chair, top down, and then embedded across the whole club. Growth of the club is a key one and can factor in all different aspects. So it may well be growth of new teams, different formats, different pathways to male, female disability and so forth, progression through the National League system, expansion of venue and facilities and so forth. So really, it's the chair that needs to know where you're heading and how you're going to get there, how you're going to grow that club. New teams is a crucial one, and that needs to be something that is taken in as the ownership of the management committee, certainly, because any decision around growing the club and having new teams is going to have a financial implication on the organisation. A lot of managers may well think they've got enough players they want to immediately start up a new team, but may not appreciate what that's going to do in terms of getting in a whole other new set of kit, a new set of or hiring a new facility, potentially more pitch fees, and then weighing that up against registration fees of the club. So really, as a chair, you need to have that clear vision in your head as to how the club's going to progress over the next 1, 3, or 5 years. That will then help inform funding opportunities, will then support that growth, and whether you need to look more at commercial partnerships or whether you need to restructure your registration fees and so forth. Further down towards the bottom, we've got about England football accreditation, and that is very much about the meeting the criteria for the FA's kite mark of England football accreditation. This is a commitment to the FA's ethos around player safeguarding and development, coaching development, and having the right infrastructure within your club to support that long-term sustainability. More information about that is available on our website and on the FA's website, but I'm not going to go into detail about the different levels of accreditation at this stage. You may also want to think about your legal structure and whether that is the correct one for you. Again, I'm not going to go into detail about all of the different ones, but it's important to recognize what your current structure is, or what your current legal structure is, what alternative structures are out there, what's going to be most appropriate, or what might be that tipping point or that trigger to change from, let's say, an unincorporated member association into an incorporated business or a registered charity. It's important to recognise as well, each one of those will bring on additional reporting requirements and compliance, because you may suddenly now be falling under things like Companies House or Charities Commission with your annual financial reporting and so forth. What I want to set out now is just around the minimum expectations. If you are not incorporated or registered charity and are just a general members club, can appreciate that, particularly if you're a new club, it may not be clear what your expectations or requirements are in that type of organisation. What I will say is that what's called unincorporated members association is the technical term for it. that effectively is just a members club. So it's really 99% of our clubs really would fall under this criteria. So the minimum expectations that we require of a club then is that you should have a constitution. So that means a set of rules that kind of dictate how decisions are made, how the club is run, how members are admitted, and what would happen were the club were to dissolve ultimately. There should be a club bank account. That's more to protect yourselves as the volunteers, to make sure that you are not exposing yourselves too much financially when making some of these financial arrangements. You need to maintain a list of members, and the FA certainly have platforms to support you with that through the club portal. But whether you do that online or as an offline membership register, there is a requirement to be able to show who are the members of the clubs that should be involved in the participation and decision-making process. Part of that then is holding an annual general meeting of those members where they have the opportunity to elect the management committee and hear the financial reports, challenge the committee as to how they're maybe operating the club, and have that kind of check and challenge and accountability there. And on top of that, you must still comply with football regulations. So any requirements that the FA or the county FA set down from time to time around safeguarding, club governance, and so forth. And really, the model that we're looking to adopt here is a club governance model. So this can also be applied to all aspects of the club and any kind of subcommittees that you may have. But ultimately, as a membership organisation, the members appoint the committee and the committee serve at the pleasure of the members. So on an annual basis, there should be an annual general meeting where initially the club members will elect a committee. That committee then goes off for a year, runs the club, makes those executive decisions to set the strategy and the operations of the club. But then at the end of the year, they report back to those committees at the annual general meeting, take any questions they may have, kind of justify or explain any key decisions that have been made over that 12-month period. And then we repeat the cycle again. So they should then have that opportunity to be re-elected and continue running the club going forward. Or the members have the opportunity then to vote in a new person if they feel that change is needed. As I say, that can be applied to finances. It can be applied to other subcommittee or working groups that even if it's a subcommittee of the management committee, you will, as a whole, be appointing that committee. They'll be going off and operating, but reporting back and having the opportunity for check and challenge and renewal on a regular basis. And all of these feed into the expectations and standards around good governance. So governance in general is how an organisation makes their decisions and operates. Good governance means that those decisions are being taken in a fair and appropriate manner. So the keywords that are on the screen right now are critical to this. It's all about accountability, transparency, inclusivity. As a management committee, you've got a responsibility as well to be participatory, to try to draw people into that decision-making process, and then be responsive as and when issues may crop up and you're being asked to make a decision or respond to an issue on behalf of the committee. The quote-unquote legal in the top right doesn't necessarily mean kind of High Court, UK law, Old Bailey type matters, but it means that your decision-making process should be in line with your club constitution, and therefore the legality within that structure. Other considerations you may want to take into account when you are setting up and managing the club and looking at that leadership model include things like the committee size or the use of subcommittees, making sure it's not too big but not too small, making sure you've got good representation on that committee. So that may well be across different formats. You know, if you're a large community club that's got male, female, disability, and youth pathways, wouldn't be appropriate if all of the committee are only coming from the adult male pathway, let's say. You want to make sure you've got representation across those different streams on your management committee, as well as diversity of backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, and so forth, to make sure that you've got diversity of thought within that management committee. One thing that's underappreciated but is also important in small community clubs is about having diversity of households on that committee. If you've got a committee of 5, but it turns out within that 5 you've got a husband and wife and a child all sitting on that committee, all living together, then actually you've already got a built-in majority. Decisions can then be taken away from that committee, maybe discussed, and you have a majority vote already coming to a committee or a voting situation. And so it's important you have a diversity of households as well in those critical decision-making roles. That leads nicely into conflicts of interest, and making sure that when people are making decisions on behalf of the club, they are recognizing if they do have any conflicts and that those are dealt with appropriately. Now, these are real or perceived. So classic one of a real conflict of interest may well be around financial arrangements, which could materially benefit one of those individuals that is making that decision. So, for example, let's say a committee are conducting a vote as to whether the club secretary should be paid a stipend for their work over the course of the year. Wouldn't be appropriate for the secretary to be one of the ones voting, because obviously they are the one that will be benefiting from that. Equally, that's where there would be a conflict of interest if, let's say, the secretary's partner was also one of the individuals making that vote. Perception of conflict of interest is where you don't have that direct tie, but somebody on the outside looking in goes, they've got a vested interest in this decision. So again, it may well be decisions around kind of close friends or teams that committee members are running, and if they're going to be impacted as a result of a decision being made about a third party, they could be perceived as having a conflict of interest in the outcome of that. It's all about managing those situations where appropriate and where relevant, removing that conflicted person from the decision-making process. Or if it's a perceived conflict, but not a real one, you may agree that it's fair for that person to be involved in that decision-making process, but you should recognize the minute that you have recorded that discussion and you've taken into consideration that perception. The final point is whether it would be appropriate to have term limits on the management committee. I recognise that that's a challenge in volunteer organisations where sometimes it can be hard enough just to get enough volunteers to run the club in the first place without, limiting the length that they can be there and rolling them over after 3 or 5 years or whatever it may be. But it's something to be considered, I think, particularly actually in the leadership roles. Part of a natural turnover of leadership roles is that you bring in new perspectives, new ideas, and the club has the ability to evolve and adapt and develop. If you have the same management committee that's been in place for 10 or 15 or 20 years, let's say, then you run the risk of always doing what you've always done, which means you're not actually going to adapt to the changes in the football market. So again, it's something that might well be considered. Part of the long-term strategy then is also around being involved and identifying those funding and development opportunities. Certainly, there are a lot of FA and county FA grants out there and available to help you with different parts of managing the club. They tend to be quite specific. So thinking recently, we've had opportunities for grants around redeveloping clubhouse kitchens. So they won't be very specific and narrow focused on that. But then you've also got broader commercial partnerships that might be available through local businesses. So sponsorship, whether that's purely financial or in kind, and longer term kind of partnerships that might be available to you. Again, that should be the chair that is leading those. It's a responsibility on you as the chair to get out and network in the local community, promote the club, promote the good work you're doing, the opportunities that might be available for external organisations to partner with you. Think of yourself in that role as a bit of a salesperson. When it comes to day-to-day management now, ultimately as the chair, you're accountable or responsible for the conduct and the management of that organisation, even if it's not yourself sort of doing that on a day-to-day basis. So say, hopefully you'll have a strong management team working with you on the committee. And particularly important is the relationship between the chair and the secretary. I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail later. But as a chair, you'll be involved on a regular basis, chairing the meetings, and that is really where you get to flex your strategic leadership muscles. So it's around leading influence and influencing others, mediating and facilitating debate and discussion when appropriate, and trying to drive people towards a consensus view or an agreed position from the club. As the chair, you're probably ultimately responsible for any compliance of the organisation with any legal responsibilities you may have. That is part of the role of being that figurehead, being the pinnacle of the club. And then you'll also have a bit of responsibility around resolving any internal disputes. Again, that may not necessarily fall on yourself individually. There is a complaint, we'd recommend that's kind of voted on by the management committee or a subcommittee thereof. But as a chair, it's likely that if there are disputes or issues like personality clashes, people don't agree with the way the club is being run, or have an issue with a particular decision that's been made, may well come to yourself as the chair to decide what the appropriate way forward is and make sure that that issue is resolved in the appropriate manner. Mentioned before about representing the club and the importance there. In terms of representing the club to football bodies, you may well be asked or invited to attend county FA meetings or league meetings. Part of that may then involve voting on matters concerning the club. So at a league AGM or at the county FA AGM, there's not the opportunity to vote on rule changes, elect committee members and so forth. So you've got that responsibility to represent the club and voting on behalf of the best interests of the club. Now, with league AGMs, it may depend on the size of the club, how you want to structure that. If you are a one-team club, you may feel it's the manager that's best placed attending a meeting because they understand the league better than perhaps you will. However, if you're a large club and you've got multiple teams that are members of a specific league, we'd probably recommend it's somebody from the club management committee that attends those AGMs. Reason being that in that situation, if you've got 5 or 6 teams in the same league and you just send one of your team managers to that meeting, they may not fully appreciate the impact of those other decisions on the other teams within the club, and become a bit too kind of narrow focused on their own team. Whereas a representative from the club management committee should have a broader understanding of the implications of some of those decisions that are being made. The final point there is around the expectations of the county FA. Typically, if we're going to a club asking for assistance or information around compliance or a disciplinary incident, we will go to the secretary as our first point of contact. However, if we've gone to the secretary and we haven't had much of a response, or we're trying to contact the club and we can't get through to anybody, our second point of call will normally be the chair, or if it's a youth matter, the club welfare officer. So in those instances, I would probably say if we're coming to yourselves as the chair asking for information, probably means that somebody else isn't giving it to us. So again, it's something that we would look to you to address internally to reinforce the importance to the other members of the management committee or whoever it is we're going to, the importance of providing that information and collaborating and working with the county FA. In terms of external organisations and non-footballing bodies, then I've mentioned before about the responsibility to represent the club in the local community, develop those relationships with partner organisations and potential sponsors, whether that is building ties with other sports clubs within the local community, approaching local businesses, trying to get sponsorship on board, trying to create commercial partnerships to support that those longer term goals and that long-term sustainability of the club. Mentioned a couple of times about the importance of the club secretary. I want to touch just quickly how I see the role of the club secretary and the importance that they have within the club. So we do a separate secretary induction each year, which we held a couple of weeks ago and should be available now on our YouTube channel. But the club secretary is the primary administrator and the main point of contact for people both within and outside the club on just about every aspect of their activities. It will tend to be the club secretary that is listed on club portal for county FAs to contact them, on the England football find football function. So a lot of Fs on find football. So new members would contact them as that first point of contact. Existing members would go to them if they had an issue. They are the ones that should be kind of conducting all the correspondence on behalf of the club. So ultimately, that is a critical role. The chair and the secretary need to be working daily or very, very closely to ensure that you are both on the same page about all of those different aspects of the administration, so that the secretary is aware of what to do when an issue comes in, what needs to get escalated to yourselves as chair, and you know what they've been dealing with and any of the challenges they're facing. And just to reinforce again, from our perspective at the County FA, we will always go to the club secretary as the first point of contact. Our expectation is then that they pass that on to the relevant person internally, whether it's a team manager, a welfare officer, or yourselves as the chair, the treasurer, whoever it may be, and that they will support us with any County FA queries into disciplinary incidents, DBS compliance, or complaints. I'm going to take a moment now just to go through the different online platforms that we have available to you to help you with the running of the club. I'm going to start in the top right with the dark blue there in the whole game system. The whole game system's been in effect for about the last 8 years and has been the main platform that we've been using for running football. However, it's in the process of being decommissioned. So going forward, there's only really one piece of functionality that's going to be used in the whole game system, and that is managing discipline. The expectation is that discipline will move into Club Portal in time for the 24-25 season. Club Portal then is now therefore becoming the key platform for managing the club. This is where you will have a dashboard of all of your key information. It's where you're able to update the officials of who's running the club, who's running each team. It's where you do affiliation now, your England football accreditation, your player registrations. So that is becoming the source of all kind of functionality and knowledge for clubs. In the bottom right then, in the green, is full-time, which has been around forever, and is really the key league administration tool. So this is the platform that the majority of our leagues will use for creating fixtures, managing results, player statistics, assigning referees, and so forth. That's how you know who you're going to be playing on a week-by-week basis. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do a bit of a demonstration in full-time just because as the county, we don't actually have access to all the leagues or to a demo league that we can kind of demonstrate functionality. But if you do need any assistance on that, I'll be able to point you in the direction of where to go shortly. So in the meantime, I am quickly going to change the screen that's being shared just so that we can show you a couple of key dashboards to help you with running the club on these different platforms. So hopefully you are now able to see whole game. And if my head tilts to the side, it's because I'm just looking at this now on a different screen. So when you first log into whole game, you're going to come onto this dashboard, which is an individual dashboard. So across the top are all the different leagues or clubs that you have formal roles with, and down the side are some tabs which are very much around your account with the FA. Vast majority of these will now automatically redirect you to the club portal or the My Account section of the FA website. But what I wanted to quickly show you on this was the notifications tab. These notifications are key because they give you the newest information about in whole game disciplinary cases that may have been added for your club. So if I expand on this, you'll see a series of notifications that have come up notifying me that cases have been raised and that players are about to go under suspension, and that actually the entire club could be suspended if a disciplinary case is not paid by, in this case, early September. So what we'd recommend is coming onto whole game once a week or so, taking a look through the notifications. This will alert you as to whether the treasurer's not been paying the bills, and therefore the club may be facing a suspension for non-payment of fines, and kind of give you your action points that need to be resolved. Once something has been resolved, if you click on the specific notification, we'd always recommend marking it as read. You'll always be able to get those back if you click on all up here. You'll see all the historic notifications. But if you have the keep unaction points as unread, it really helps you with staying on top of action points and things you really need to go in and resolve. If I come into the club chair tab across the top now, this is the type of platform you'll see when you log in. It will show you any financial amounts outstanding, give you the opportunity if you wanted to go in and pay those outstanding invoices. It will also show you a list up at the top of suspensions if there are any current suspensions, which unfortunately there aren't for this demo club right now. If I click into the discipline tab, however, you'll also then be able to see an overview of all disciplinary cases within the club for the season. You can track things like sending offs. You can go into the case ID and see the full information around how long the player's been suspended for, what the fine has been, whether that case has been paid and closed off or is still active. So again, as I say, we'd really recommend logging into this on a regular basis so that you can stay on top of the club position and keep on top of any disciplinary offences. What we're trying to avoid with this is the club being placed under suspension for non-payment of fines or playing a suspended player, which could lead to further punishments from the county FA in terms of fines for fielding suspended players, but also could see you lose any points from that match deducted by the league for fielding an ineligible player. So that's the whole game. Club portal now. When you first come into portal, you will receive you will see this My Club dashboard, which gives you the key contact information within the club. Again, this isn't going to be changing very much, but it will show you kind of what that public facing information is. Again, what I would say on this is you want to make sure that you've got this tab here, the Make Club Contact Details Public, checked. That means that if an individual is new to the area and goes onto the Find Football platform, your club will appear as an option for recruiting players, and it gives you the opportunity to make contact with new recruits. The tabs along the top here you can use internally. It's not something that we see or draw down reports on at the county, but actually it's functionality to give you a good way to stay on top of things like your club sponsors. If you've got any formal partnerships with other clubs, you've got access to your social media accounts, which again then appear on FA websites. And if you are an incorporated organisation, you can add information about that here. Again, it just gives you all of your club details in one place and saves you having to maintain duplicate or multiple offline records. You can also see through here details of all the players within the club and the registrations of them. You can view the affiliation status of your teams, and this will also show you how many players are allocated to each team. Again, we're now getting ready for the start of the new season, so it may be worth just going into this tab, checking that all of the teams that are active for next season have either been affiliated, and you can see we've got green affiliation here and the red unaffiliated for this team. If they're not going to be back next season, we'd recommend folding them. Again, just keeps all of the data current and avoids confusion or making mistakes or missing something, because you've got a whole list of not current or no longer relevant data still clogging up the system. The officials tab then is an important one. So this is where you can see who's in what role within the club. So you've got club level roles and then you've got team level roles. You also then have the key officials within the club, which are the secretary, chair, treasurer, and welfare officer. And if you go to this final tab here, the safeguarding and qualifications tab, you can actually download a report of all of the team officials within your club. It is RAG rated, so you can see who's fully compliant, who may be missing qualifications, and which qualifications may be expiring over the course of the next season. And you can use that to put together an action plan around kind of DBS renewals, if you need to work with the county FA to run additional courses, or if you need to send coaches on specific courses to maintain their qualifications. It helps you with all of that planning. And the final tab on here is just will be any affiliation related invoices. Again, you'll be able to see if anything's paid, unpaid, and the status of everything. So again, you can keep on top of the business of the organization and the status of everything, even if you're not actively doing all of that administration yourself. So those are the key platforms. Let me just put the presentation back up. Is this going to jump straight back to where I was? Yeah. Oh, resume. There we go. So we're back to where we were before. The FA have managed to condense quite a lot of the different platforms and just say these are the key ones going forward. So hopefully by probably the end of this season, effectively 90% or more of all of the FA functionality is going to be done through that FA Club portal. So it's one to really get familiar with. What the FA are doing quite often is they're releasing new functionality kind of softly, so it will suddenly appear one day, but then a few weeks later they'll send out some more communications promoting that functionality. So keep an eye, it gives you an opportunity to test something perhaps just before it is formally promoted. But new functionality is coming through all the time, so I'd really recommend kind of getting familiar with that system as much as you can. If you do need any support, this is a great website to be aware of, the FA's Grassroots Technology Help Desk. They've got walkthroughs, FAQ guides, video guides to all of their key technology platforms. So if there's anything that you come across you're not quite sure how to do that, let's say it's requesting international clearance or dispensation for a player to play down a year, if you go onto this website, there will be a guide to tell you how to do that. It's one that we at the County FA use pretty much on a daily basis as well, because if something crops up, we're not entirely sure how to do it, or we want to be able to quickly reference the link to somebody, we will be on there constantly. And it's really kind of saves us having to duplicate all of that work over and over again. We are then looking to introduce this season a support hub to help out with other aspects of club management. So we really recognise the value of the FA's technology support platform. It's a fantastic tool, but it only relates to technology. So what we're looking to do is duplicate that, but around all of the offline administration of a club. So things like those governance requirements I was talking about earlier, we'll be putting on there how to conduct AGMs, who needs international clearance and why, facilities and funding opportunities and how to access those. All of that kind of information will be going onto this new support hub, which will be launching in September 2023. The website is now already live, so if you want to see what is being added as we're adding it, you can do. But if not, as I say, from September, that will hopefully be fully built and available to everybody. In addition to that, we've got a lot of offline support and resources available. So we've got prompt customer support, and we've got service level agreements around trying to respond to any issue within 2 working days and resolve those issues within 4 working days of them coming into us. We hit about 97 to 98% of those emails within those targets. So we try to make sure that those issues are turned around very promptly. We also then run regular CPD and information sessions throughout the season, kind of similar to this. We might be doing webinars on specific topics. We hold regular in-person consultation events across the county as well, if you want to come and meet us in person. So hopefully you'll find different ways to kind of engage with us over the course of the season and where we can support you with running the club. One final thing that I wanted to direct you towards is our governance self-assessment. This is a tool we put together a few years ago now around giving a club an opportunity to take a step back and look at how you're structured and how you operate, and kind of create a bit of a risk assessment for what areas may need a bit of work or development. So there's 7 categories. It's probably about 50 questions in total, I reckon. And for each question, I'll give you 3 different alternative options. It's pretty easy probably to see which ones are red, amber or green. But we'd encourage anybody to reach out to us to request a copy of this and to work through that. We can then help you out with a governance development plan. And there will be things, the questions that might be on there will be things like, we host an annual general meeting every single year. We have hosted general meetings, but we don't do them annually, or we've never hosted an annual meeting of our members. And it kind of will then work with you to kind of see how we can embed those best practice areas of good governance into the club. Ultimately, that will hopefully lead to longer term sustainability and growth as a club, because effective decision making will lead to effective management and effective growth. If you do want that, you can reach out to myself and I can send that through. The email address is alistair.k@bucks-bucksfa.com. And that is it. Thank you very much, as I said, for joining us. Thank you for putting your hand up and agreeing to step into the role of a club chair. As I say, hopefully it is a really, really rewarding one. You get access to a lot of different opportunities through football. There's a reason why it is so popular, and there is a reason why it is the biggest game in the country, and it is because of volunteers such as yourself that help keep it going. If you do ever need any help, please reach out to us at the County FA. You can reach out to us by email, through the website, by phone, and we're here to help support you run football. So if there is anything we can do, please let us know.